And now we're learning the depth of depravity of Obama's FBI and Biden's Department of Injustice. The new axis of evil, the left-wing press, permanent Washington, and the Socialist-Democrat Party. An in-your-face reality check of how far our nation has fallen under socialists in tonight's preamble. The press coverage should have been wall-to-wall. The focus should have been intense. Instead, the plight of abused young girls in USA Gymnastics was greeted with a callous yawn, an unfeeling yawn by the majority of the biased press. Why? Because not only were these girls victimized by a serial pedophile, they were victimized again by Barack Obama's FBI and Joe Biden's Injustice Department. But these girls deserve to be heard and will be heard on the Chris Salcedo Show. Just a warning. The subject matter you're about to hear is disturbing. The sound bites are going to be a little longer than we usually have them because I think these voices of these young girls, these young ladies, need to be heard. USA Gymnastics doctor, air quotes, Larry Nassar, victimized these little girls for years. Now he's in jail. But what about those who enabled him?
I am also a survivor of sexual abuse, and I believe without a doubt that the circumstances that led to my abuse and allowed it to continue are directly the result of the fact that the organizations created by Congress to oversee and protect me as an athlete, USA Gymnastics and the United States Olympic and Paralympic Committee failed to do their jobs. Nelson Mandela once said, there can be no keener revelation of a society's soul than the way in which it treats its children. It is the power of that statement that compels and empowers me to be here in front of you today. I don't want another young gymnast, Olympic athlete, or any individual to experience the horror that I and hundreds of others have endured before, during, and continuing to this day in the wake of the Larry Nassar abuse. To be clear,
how does our nation treat our children? We turn them over to unaccountable government-run schools that steal parental rights and indoctrinate instead of educate. We tell our children to respect authority, then that same authority fails them miserably.
I ask that your work be guided by the same question that Rachel Hollander and many others have asked. How much is a little girl worth? I sit before you today to raise my voice so that no little girl must endure what I, the athletes at this table, and the countless others who needlessly suffered under Nassar's guise of medical treatment, which we continue to endure today. We suffered and continue to suffer because no one at FBI, USAG, or the USOPC did what was necessary to protect us. Nassar is where he belongs, but those who enabled him deserve to be held accountable.
But that's not what we do here in America anymore. When big left-wing government fails, nobody is held accountable. Americans are left behind in Afghanistan by a leftist, callous, and uncaring administration. And that same uncaring government lied about the plight of these girls, and in so doing, protected a pedophile.
As most of you are probably aware, I was molested by the U.S. Gymnastics national team and Olympic team doctor, Larry Nassar. And in actuality, he turned out to be more of a pedophile than he was a doctor. What I'm trying to bring to your attention today is something incredibly disturbing and illegal. After telling my entire story of abuse to the FBI in the summer of 2015, not only did the FBI not report my abuse, but when they eventually documented my report 17 months later, they made entirely false claims about what I said. After reading the Office of Inspector General's OIG report, I was shocked and deeply disappointed at this narrative they chose to fabricate. They chose to lie about what I said and protect a serial child molester rather than protect not only me, but countless others.
How does this happen? I can tell you how it happens. Our two-party system in this country is a failure, and it's costing our children their innocence. I can say with 100% certainty that the 535 individuals that make up your so-called representatives in Washington have a prayer in hell in properly overseeing that leviathan that is the federal government. Through irresponsible and, I believe, criminal and unaccountable spending, this government has grown beyond the consent of the governed. Through laziness and cowardice, your elected leaders, who have been just given away their constitutional power to protect and represent you. The Congress can't even do its basic constitutional function of oversight. Where do they give their power? To the executive branch and a rogue, unconstitutional fourth branch of government. This fourth branch is made up of appointees who don't answer to you and me. They get paid. They get to keep their jobs regardless of how they perform, even if their lies protect a child molester.
My story is one in which Special Agent in Charge Jay Abbott and his subordinates did not want you to hear. And it's time that I tell you. I remember sitting on my bedroom floor for nearly 3 hours as I told them what happened to me. I hadn't even told my own mother about these facts, but I thought as uncomfortable and as hard as it was to tell my story, I was going to make a difference and hopefully protecting others from the same abuse. I told them about the sport of gymnastics, how you make the national team, and how I came to meet Larry Nassar when I was 13 at a Texas camp. I told him that the first thing Larry Nassar ever said to me was to change into shorts with no underwear because that would make it easier for him to work on me. And within minutes, he had his fingers in my vagina. I began crying at the memory over the phone, and there was just dead silence. I was so shocked at the agent's silence and disregard for my trauma. After that minute of silence, he asked, "Is that all?" Those words in itself was one of the worst moments of this entire process for me.
Many of you are shocked right now. Why? If the anti-American leftists who run your government would leave hundreds of our citizens behind in Afghanistan, what makes you think they give a damn about innocent little girls being sexually abused? Remember, this was Obama's, James Comey's, and Andrew McCabe's FBI. You know, I remember Obama's team arranging a picture of Obama and Michaela Maroney to appear together. If she knew then that Obama's FBI would lie about the abuse she was enduring, would she have consented to lend her prestige to the reprobate like Obama, a man who has daughters, I believe, the man who was responsible for creating the most anti-American government in U.S. history, well, before Biden, that is?
To have my abuse be minimized and disregarded by the people who were supposed to protect me, just to feel like my abuse was not enough. But the truth is, my abuse was enough, and they wanted to cover it up. USA Gymnastics, in concert with the FBI and the Olympic Committee, were working together to conceal that Larry Nassar was a predator. This was very clear, cookie-cutter pedophilia and abuse. And this is important because I told the FBI all of this, and they chose to falsify my report and to not only minimize my abuse, but silence me yet again. According to the OIG report, about 14 months after I disclosed my abuse to the FBI, nearly a year and a half later, the FBI agent who interviewed me in 2015 decided to write down my statement, a statement that the OIG report determined to be materially false. What is the point of reporting abuse if our own FBI agents are going to take it upon themselves to bury that report in a drawer? They had legal, legitimate evidence of child abuse and did nothing. If they're not going to protect me, I want to know, who are they trying to protect? Deputy Attorney General Lisa Monaco couldn't even bring herself to be here today.
You heard that correctly. Biden's left-wing, unaccountable government couldn't even be bothered to look these girls in the eye. But, well, why would they? Dictators don't get held accountable, right? Socialists never have to beg forgiveness from the subjects they injure. An impotent and powerless Senator Dick Blumenthal pretended he was surprised by the uncaring nature of America's socialist government.
I'm going to be demanding more of the FBI, but even more important, of the Department of Justice. The Department of Justice today was a no-show. The Department of Justice failed to appear.
Is it starting to sink in? Do y'all understand the folly of trust me government? Do you see why it's dangerous to trust socialists with all of this unaccountable, unearned power? Do you finally fathom the meaning of the saying, a government big enough to give you everything you want is big enough to take everything you have? Do you comprehend a Chris Salcedo Show axiom that states, it's best not to give government more power lest it be abused? The federal government is too big, unaccountable, and wastes our hard-earned money. Our money is financed arming the Taliban, leaving our people behind in Afghanistan, General Milley making his little phone call to communist China, open borders, an out-of-control pandemic, rampant illegal immigration, promised tax increases, skyrocketing inflation, and now the socialists want to spend $3.5 trillion more of our money. That's on top of the $5 trillion they've already wasted. And we're even funding an FBI that would lie about molested children. America, indeed no nation, has ever perfected big government. It can't be perfected. Here's a common denominator in this massive pain those girls are going through and the massive pain our country is going through. It's massive, bloated, unaccountable government, and the party that imposes that massive, bloated, unaccountable government. It was Obama, Comey, McCabe, that FBI that lied about the abuse suffered by these little girls. It was Biden's Injustice Department that couldn't be bothered to show up. And it was the biased press, desperate to protect the Socialist Party, that still refuses to make them answer for their unspeakable and, I believe, criminal acts. Seems to me that these girls were victimized 3 times. Once by Larry Nassar, once by America's government, and then again by a sick and demented left-wing press.
Hey, I'm Rob Finnerty. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please join the conversation in the comments below. Don't forget to subscribe, too. Hit the bell icon to be alerted to breaking news. And remember, there's a whole lot more on Newsmax TV, America's fastest-growing cable news network. Newsmax TV, we're real news for real people.